I think you will recall, Madam Speaker, that last year, when I introduced the budget statement for 2012, we explored briefly the concepts of hope, which many people were speaking of at the time, and juxtaposed this against truth in the need and within the context of our national and patriotic responsibility to move this country forward. I now take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, in presenting Budget 2013 to remind us of the elevated status accorded faith, particularly as referenced in the New Testament books of Hebrews and James. And what is faith, Madam Speaker? According to Hebrews, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Madam Speaker, I refer not to blind faith, but rather to belief in an outcome for which the foundation has been laid. In this vein, I am moved to recall the poetic words of Samuel Kaiser. And he said, "Faith is not merely praying upon your knees at night. Faith is not merely straying through darkness to the light. Faith is not merely waiting for glory that may be. And faith is not merely hating the sinful ecstasy. Faith is the brave endeavor, the splendid enterprise, the strength to serve, whatever conditions may arise." Indeed, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, faith is not passively praying or timidly waiting. Faith is endeavor. Faith is enterprise. Faith is service, aggressive, assertive, assured. And as James posits, what does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Accordingly, Madam Speaker, faith by nature and by definition must include action. If, therefore, we truly have faith in our children, we will be active in molding them. If we truly have faith in our communities, we will be energetic in uplifting them. If we say we have faith in our country's future, we will be instrumental in creating that future. We will not be merely straying through darkness to the light or waiting for glory that may be. Antigua and Barbuda, whilst being a country, is at its heart a community of 86,000 close-knit individuals. We are never unmoved by another's joy or somehow untouched by another's misfortune. We are related by blood, by deep friendships, by common interests, by cross-cutting values, and, most of all, by love of country. But, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, are we related by faith? Not blind faith, but faith grounded in a vibrant consensus of country over party, community over insularity, and the greater good over individual interests. This budget address follows swiftly upon the heels of our independence anniversary. For many of us, independence is a time of celebration, but also one of stock-taking, reflection, and introspection. In taking stock, we can conclude that we are indeed a blessed country and a blessed community with a rich heritage. Upon reflection, we can say that 2012 has been a challenging year, but that we have made it through with the assistance of the Almighty. By way of introspection, we may ponder upon our stewardship and upon our contributions towards nation building. Were we mindless custodians or careful stewards? Were we booing observers or engaged participants? Sneering cynics or faithful nationals? Madam Speaker, we are now in our 32nd year of nationhood, but have we come of age? I wish to submit that an intuitive and coordinated stride of Antiguans and Barbudans toward one common destiny would evidence our coming of age. I would further suggest that such an advance could only be enabled by a strong and unifying faith, not blind faith, but faith in our destiny, grounded in country-first values and propelled by people-centered policies. And what is the basis of such faith, Madam Speaker? Under the umbrella of the National Economic and Social Transformation Plan, the NEST plan, we are today reclaiming our people's trust in government and its institutions. We are repairing and strengthening our relationships with development partners. And we have rebranded Antigua and Barbuda as a responsible member of the community of nations. In particular, we have embarked upon a far-reaching program of public sector modernization. We are strengthening our social safety nets, stimulating economic activity, and addressing the concerns of our retirees by undertaking pension reform. These and other initiatives are all necessary enablers for creating a platform for significant and sustained growth in our economy. And, Madam Speaker, growth is indeed returning on the basis of the strong platform that is being constructed. As we, citizens of faith, whether as individuals, as family businesses, corporations, clubs, or communities, reach for the substance of things hoped for, we are therefore called to seek out solutions, not to stymie them, to contain conflicts, not to create them, and to build bridges, not to burn them. In solving our problems, self-belief swells. In mitigating conflicts, unity is enhanced. Where self-belief is cultivated, certainty resides. Where unity is present, credibility thrives. And where bridges are constructed, new horizons may confidently be pursued. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the theme for this year's budget presentation is certainty, confidence, and credibility, securing growth and sustainability. Madam Speaker, the bridges that we have built to date have not only given us access to friendly governments, well-wishers, and development partners, but these very bridges have permitted them access to us as well, and the traffic in both directions has been ample and growing. In this connection, we have welcomed many institutions and organizations to our shores, and they in turn have opened their doors to us. I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to record our thanks to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, to the OECS Secretariat, to the Caribbean Development Bank, the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, CATAC, to CARICOM, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, the United Kingdom Department for International Development, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Commonwealth Secretariat. A number of sovereign governments have also demonstrated faith in Antigua and Barbuda, even though they themselves have not escaped the travails foisted upon them by the difficult global situation. Accordingly, Madam Speaker, Antigua and Barbuda is grateful to the Republic of Cuba, and we are thankful for the hundreds of scholarships that has allowed young Antiguans and Barbudans to pursue their career dreams. We are grateful, Madam Speaker, to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and at this time, our prayers go out to their president, Hugo Chavez, who recently underwent cancer surgery. We wish him a speedy recovery. Madam Speaker, the People's Republic of China has demonstrated their true friendship to Antigua and Barbuda with their development assistance. I want to single out the hard work of the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Antigua and Barbuda for the excellent work that he has done in moving the development process forward. Madam Speaker, I want to recognize the assistance of the Republic of Korea, of the United States of America, of Japan, the United Kingdom, and Canada for their generous support. Finally, a team of talented and committed professionals have gone above and beyond the call of duty over the past several weeks so that I could be in a position to deliver this statement today. I must thank all those who worked on the budget, including Mr. Whitfield Harris, Financial Secretary. Ms. Rosona Davis, Deputy Financial Secretary. Mr. John Edwards, Deputy Financial Secretary. Mr. Sean Senak, Permanent Secretary. Mrs. Carolyn Charles Tongue, Budget Director, and Ms. Sandra Henry, Deputy Budget Director, and other members of the Budget Office staff. Mrs. Nadia Spencer Henry, Debt Manager, and the members of the Debt Unit. Dr. Cleopatra Gittins, the Accountant General. Mr. Everett Christian, Project Manager, Revenue Reform. Ms. Hortense Brooks, the Strategic Development Coordinator, and her team. Dr. Gail Archibald, Project Coordinator, Project Management Unit. Mr. Ted Lewis and Ms. Denise Knight, Senior Economist, and Mrs. Gail Imhoff-Gordon, Economist. I also want to take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to thank the many workers and the business community in general for their support and patience. Many times, as we have sought to negotiate this very treacherous path, I also want to say thank you to those public servants for their patience, who also were paid late, especially for the November salaries. I am grateful for that patience. I recognize the difficulty that it causes, and I know the Teachers Union, for example, decided to take action. All I can do, Madam Speaker, is to say sorry and beg pardon. I have no angst. I understand, but I would just ask that the report cards for the students, I think that's very important, and I think maybe they may want to look at that again. But the bottom line is, Madam Speaker, as we go forward, we will continue to make every effort, and I will speak about it later, to make these commitments and to make them on time. What I'm happy to say, however, Madam Speaker, is that the December wages and salaries will not be late. In fact, I'm pleased to announce that this morning we started paying the December salaries, and 2 banks have already been paid, the FCIB and Scotiabank. And we will ensure that this is completed, and so persons need have no fear. I also want to say that we have been able to maintain regular and consistent payment with respect to the government pensioners, and that is something that we will ensure is never compromised. With respect to the Social Security pensioners, there was a notice saying that they may be paid after Christmas. I've discussed this matter with the Prime Minister, and we are resolved that whatever it takes, this must not happen. Those persons who have labored in the vineyard, who have done their time, paid their dues, we must ensure whatever has to be done, they must be paid before Christmas. With your indulgence, Madam Speaker, I will now present an abbreviated version of the budget statement for 2012. The full statement will be available on the government website immediately after my presentation. I want to begin, Madam Speaker, by looking at the economic developments for this year, the year 2012. And to note that the passage of time and the rapid advances in technology, in particular ICT, that it has pronounced in very clear form the interrelatedness of the global economy. And the global economy is becoming more and more interrelated by the day. And so what happens in one country will inevitably affect what happens in another country, more so than ever before. Let's take an example. When the US economy is in decline, it will affect what happens in China, because the US is the main market for Chinese products. And if the US economy affects the Chinese economy, where they are unable to produce so that they can satisfy the US market because of the dampened demand, it will affect what's happening in countries like Brazil, who supply iron ore to China for the Chinese steel mills. So then you will see the U.S. economy, if it goes down, it affects the rate of growth in China. In turn, that will affect the rate of growth in Brazil and many other countries. And it is not dissimilar in our situation where our principal source markets for tourism, which is our principal industry, that we're the two principal source markets, the UK and the US, wherever they're having difficulties, is going to have an impact on us. And so you may find that the ships may come, the cruise lines may come, but the vendors will tell you that those who come, they're not spending as much as they used to. Similarly, many of the stayover visitors, they come to the hotels, but the hotels are forced to give them reduced rates in order to attract them. And so even though you get the numbers, you still won't get the yield. These are problems, Madam Speaker, which any economy will face, and which you can only seek to mitigate the impact, but those are problems that are not caused within the country, but they will affect the country in a very substantial way. And I think it's very important that we understand the interrelatedness of the global economy and recognize that in Antigua and Barbuda, we are not a silo existing unto ourselves, but we are part of this interrelated global economy. So what we're seeing today in the global economy is a certain degree of uncertainty. But the center of the uncertainty has shifted from the North American economies, in particular the United States, over to the Euro area, mainly the European economies. Greece, Italy, Spain. The Euro area today is characterized by weak financial systems, fiscal consolidation pressures, stresses in sovereign debt market, and volatile capital flows. These are their main challenges. But when we speak of that, Madam Speaker, I don't want people to begin to wonder, well, what are these things? Volatile capital flows. Money is moving in an unpredictable and an uncertain way, mainly out of Europe. That is not a good state of affairs. You do not want that to be happening. It creates uncertainty, and once you have uncertainty, it affects confidence. And everything depends on confidence. If there's to be economic growth, there has to be confidence. Confidence that people will have so that they can invest. This is why we're saying, Madam Speaker, for this year, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about greater degrees of confidence, credibility, and certainty. This is the platform on which you build sustainable economic growth. The outlook for the global economy for 2012 is that the global economy will grow by approximately 3.3%, which is less than the 3.8% of 2011. Now, with regard to the advanced countries, the rate of growth for 2012 in the United States is 2.2% compared to 1.8% in 2011. So those of us who followed the US presidential election will know that this is what President Obama was saying at the time, that things are beginning to improve. That last year they had growth of 1.8. This year they expect to record growth of 2.2. Canada is expected to grow by 1.9% this year, but they grew last year at 2.4. So we've seen a little slippage there. The United Kingdom is expected this year to contract by 0.4% compared to growth of 0.7% in 2011. Now, all of this is intended to demonstrate that the growth is not a magic formula. It's not happening in the advanced countries. They grow marginally this year, they contract marginally next year. That's the reality of the environment, the interrelated environment in which we're operating. In the Caribbean, if we are to take a few examples, Barbados in 2012 is expected to grow by 0.7%. Last year they grew by 0.6%. Trinidad and Tobago is expected to grow by 0.7% also. Last year Trinidad contracted by 1.5%. We look now at the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the data available as of September of this year indicates that the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union will contract by 0.2%. What I'm pleased to say, however, Madam Speaker, is that Antigua and Barbuda is estimated to grow by 1.2%, which is way above the regional average. I want to also say, Madam Speaker, that the improved performance in Antigua and Barbuda reflects expansion in construction of 1.6%, which has been significantly assisted by the Construct Antigua and Barbuda initiative. The restaurants and hotel sector will grow by 2%, and I'm sure my colleague, Minister McGinley, will be pleased to hear that. Transport and storage will grow by 2.2% as road, air, and sea transportation all increased due to rising activity in construction and to more passengers arriving in and departing from Antigua and Barbuda. Also, the wholesale and retail trade grew by 1.7%. Antigua and Barbuda's improved performance is indicative of the success of our homegrown policies and the slight recovery in the global economy, and specifically in the United States, our main trading partner. Having made the right macroeconomic policy choices to stabilize the domestic economy, this government is confident that as the global economy rebounds, the rate of recovery in Antigua and Barbuda will escalate and our country will experience high levels of economic growth. Turning now, Madam Speaker, to fiscal performance for 2012, this year. For this year, current revenue is estimated to amount to $660 million, which is 10% above the $597 million collected in 2011. Expenditure will amount to $660.9 million compared to $676.1 million in 2011. Now, one of the key objectives of the fiscal consolidation program is ensuring that the government can generate revenues that are needed to meet its current expenditure. The current account balance, and I want again to just explain to persons, when you speak of the current account balance, it's like your checkbook. You put in 10, you take out 11, you're going to have a deficit of 1. You put in 10, you take out 9, you have a surplus of 1. The idea is to try to have a surplus, because with that surplus, we will not be caught flat-footed as we have been caught in the past, whereby if you're hit by a hurricane, if you're hit by an external shock, you have a cushion, you have something, like your checkbook. If you have your checkbook all the way up, so you have to be checking it every day to make sure the check that you wrote yesterday is going to go through. That's not the way the country wants to be. We are not there yet, and I hear those who are sneering, those who are booing, and that's understandable. But it's where we're going. It's where the needle is moving. It's not where we are. It's not where we're coming from. It's where we're going. And Madam Speaker, where we're going in the direction of an economy that is sustainable, built on a solid platform, whereby our aim is to try to create some surpluses going forward so that we have a little money that we can build the schools. You don't have to go begging everybody for that. You have a little money, you can fix your roads. You have a little money, you can do things for a rainy day. That's where we're going, Madam Speaker. We're not there yet, but we're on the road. I also want to say, Madam Speaker, that the current account balance is the difference between current revenue and current expenditure. It represents a government's ability to cover its recurring operational expenses. The current account deficit is expected to improve by 99%, from $78.8 million in 2011 to $1 million this year in 2012. This was made possible by strong performance in the revenue sources such as the ABST, which increased by 12% compared to 2011, personal income tax by 27%, and stamp duties by 41%. On the expenditure side, wages and salaries amounted to $267 million. This is about 1% more than in 2011 at $264 million. It is still, however, below the $299 million that we were spending on payroll in 2009. So That figure, it's budgeted. A lot of it depends on cash flow. What we have to make sure is that we have